Okay, we are live. Good evening, everybody. Welcome along. This is Inspire and Be Inspired, weekly motivational conversations, occasional life hacks. Today, we are back firmly talking about music after a few weeks talking about various life topics. We are catching up with one of the UK's most loved and treasured artifacts, if that's a word I should use for him. I want to say, as always, thank you for being here, to everyone joining and passing live, and of course, let me just get rid of this alarm on my phone, to everyone that comes back and checks out the recording, because I know you like to take us in at your convenience. It is a pleasure to have you here today. As you can see on the screen, I am talking to Mr. Gavin Mills, who is known by a plethora of names. He's involved with so many different projects down the years. We're going to be getting his story. I always invite you to ask any questions, leave any comments. As there is a break in the conversation, I will pass them on to Gavin, and we can have a little discussion at the end as well. That also goes for everybody that is watching the recording. Please do leave any comments or replies, because Gavin will be tagged and he'll be able to catch them in the future. First of all, I'll say good evening to Cliff, good evening to Pax, anybody else that's there with us. Please don't be shy to say hello. You can see on this welcome screen, Danny44 is here and he's saying good evening, Andy and Gavin. So let me bring Gavin on. Here he is, the man himself. Let me just make your screen a little bit bigger to make sure that it looks good, and you're looking beautiful. There we go. You look fantastic. How are you, buddy? You okay?
I'm good, mate. I'm good. I'm just listening to what you're saying. Should I open up my Facebook or something here so I can see if people throw questions, or are you just gonna?
I'll ask them, because it may confuse you, but it's entirely up to you if you would like to. You know, whatever you like to do, my friend. Good evening, Steve. Good evening, Emily. Just you'll remember to put your Facebook on mute, because otherwise we'll get some slap.
We'll go into some weird psychedelic loop.
Yeah, so everything is looking great. What's going on? Actually, let me do that. I've been messing around so much the last couple of days. School is here. Wagwan, rude boy. Welcome, my friend. Welcome. Everyone's coming in. We were just having a conversation before we went live, saying that it is difficult. I've mentioned this so many times over the last 18 months or so. It is difficult trying to get people to join us live. And it is always nice when people can pass through and get to talk to the guests and leave any comments. I think you're going to have a lot of questions tonight, Gav. I think there's a lot of people who may want to know different things, but they will be happy to sit in patience.
Before we went on air, actually, I was asking you a question about your records, because other people here might actually be interested in this as well. About do you catalogue all your records there? And you showed me how you literally got thousands and thousands in that room. And I said, I always think it says a lot about DJs, how they sort their records.
Yeah,
Sam was very OCD. Mm-hmm. You know, about everything was put into labels and everything. I just tend to sort of just throw them in. I mean, all my albums are there, all my 12s are there, and this is a bit 80s or...
That's pretty much how mine is. I do a thing on my radio show. It's called Battleships. I do it once a month. And I have categorized all of the columns, A through to the letter O, and all of the rows, 1 down to 5, and people give me coordinates, and I have written down roughly, this is the really great Soulful House, the UK garage is there, the 80s is there, so we have a lot of fun doing that. But anyway, this isn't about me. This isn't about my records.
It's about me too. You know, when I'm looking through my records, I sort of like that random factor.
Mm-hmm. Well, I do that every week on the show. You know? I am going through them in chronological order, just because it is nice to pull out records that you forget about, you know, and every now and again I'll come across one of yours. So we've got Colin Williams here, a gentleman that you're more than familiar with. He says Gavin Mills, the ledge.
I love that.
And Chris Hunter, as promised, is here. How are you, Gav? Sorry, how are you, Chris? I'm reading all of these words. They're flowing in thick and fast. Okay, let's get to it. Mr. Gavin Mills, we are not going to come anywhere near close to covering the incredible journey that you've had in this game, but we do want to try and capture some of the highlights. But we need some context to how you got into the music industry. So tell me about life for yourself. As you became a teenager, what was going on for you between the ages of 10 and 13?
Yeah, it goes back that far for me. I mean, when I was at school, I was really good mates with somebody who most people will know is Dean Zephyrin Saint, Tribe Records. We both went to the same school. And I remember going over to his house once, and his older brother, Stanley, was already a DJ. He was like a few years older than us, and he had some decks and all his records. And I was just like, wow, this is amazing. I want to do that. I want to be a DJ. That just looks amazing. And I really liked the soul music sort of thing. And back then it was like Gap Band, Earth, Wind and Fire and Brass Construction, flicking through all his brother's records. Mm-hmm. So then I'd go down W.H. Smith and I'd find I didn't have a record player back then. I'd be buying this stuff on cassette, buy like David Joseph album or some Earth, Wind and Fire thing.
So just to put it into perspective, into context, you were born late 60s?
No, 1970.
Okay, so we're the same age, right? Okay.
Yeah.
I thought maybe you were 69, right?
I think. I might have even started getting into the sort of towards the end of the 70s because my auntie was really into soul music as well, and I remember she had like a big hi-fi at her house, and I was also fascinated by that, just how it worked, and you put this needle on and music would come out, and so I remember going there, and I remember some of the albums she had. She had Lynx, You're Lying. Mm-hmm. So that was the first time I'd heard Lynx. And what year was that? It was probably about 1980, 81.
Something like 82. Said, something like that.
Sitting there listening to that, and she had like those big, maybe those big old headphones like Russian helicopter pilots might wear.
Yeah. With the dials on the outs.
Yeah, and I've been listening to music, shouting at everyone, this is really good. Right. So the first time you ever put headphones on, you sort of do that, innit? My son did the same thing, and I was like, yeah, I remember doing that. So through school, and then I got into the whole breakdancing thing towards when I was 84, 85. Mm-hmm. And started, at that point I had a record player. At some point I bought a little Technics, but it wasn't a 1200, it was one of those linear tracking ones, where the needle went across the lid. Do you remember them?
Yeah.
So you couldn't actually do any scratching or anything. So I was really disappointed when I sort of discovered scratching. And
that was quite cool though. That was like something off Tomorrow's World. One of those.
It was pretty cool, yeah.
Yeah.
So I had one of those and a boombox. I can't remember what boombox it was, but and so that was my early setup. And even then, I was listening to things like LWR on what are the other stations? I can't remember now, but this is recording music off of the radio. I wasn't buying that many records, but I did start buying a few. Mm-hmm. Mostly I was just listening to the radio, and I started doing pause button mixes. Did you ever do them?
Okay. Yeah.
You have the two cassette players, and you make some mix. I think it was sort of inspired by, you remember Double D and Steinsky, the lessons. Mm-hmm. So just cutting little bits and pieces about and stuff. And this was all still quite early 80s. And then I think about 84, 85, I got proper turntables, but they weren't Technics again. I still couldn't afford Technics back then. And I bought some BSR. Do you remember BSR?
Okay, no.
It was a Cytronic mixer. It was all in a console. And I started doing some discos with this guy called Alex at school. And then my friend Aston, do you know
Aston Harvey?
Yeah, the Freestylers.
Yeah.
That was a good Edgware boy. We were both from Edgware. He had some Technics 1200s, and he wanted to sell them because it was all in one console, and he wanted to get in separate boxes. So he decided he was just going to sell the whole console and get some other ones. He obviously had very rich parents at the time. So I was like, amazing. I'll buy your old Technics.
Just remind me, let's not get too off track, but Aston was Blaps Posse, right?
That's right. And Dynamic Couplers. Bust it. It's time to get busy. Bust it.
Bad. Let's not get sidetracked. Okay, so all these keyboards behind you, were you playing music back then? Were you musically trained, or did that come
Learned
later in
piano
life?
when I was, from probably about the age of 7 or 8, I learned piano. But then I probably gave it up when I was about 11 or 12. I couldn't be
Okay.
bothered. I learned to play the flute as well.
Okay.
And I picked the flute up again later. So when I sort of, probably when I was doing like the UK garage stuff, I found a flute teacher near me. And I thought, I'm just going to start having some flute lessons again. So I did
Okay.
another sort of few years of lessons there, and then sort of like got sidetracked and gave up. But I'll probably pick that up again at some point.
Full on Ron Burgundy.
From Burgundy, yeah.
Okay,
Just
so
up some amazing flute on or something.
oh,
I have to put a
brilliant.
big cash on I.
So it's the same story that we hear time and time again from all of us born between 68, 72, 73, breakdancing into, and then down south you would have got into the jazz funk scene. I'm assuming the rare groove scene as it progressed.
Yeah, the rare groove came out of like, because I was sort of into hip hop, and then I was buying these hip hop records, and then Aston was, one of my best mates back then, still is, but he sort of showed me these breaks and beat records,
Hmm.
and on there he was like, oh, that bit in Eric B and Rakim comes from this this old rare groove record, and it's just that little bit there, and it's like, oh, I see, okay. And then I started really getting into the rare groove side of things, and it's like, oh, I love this Bobby Bird track, and I learned all about the sort of music that came before.
Yeah,
It was
I
more
hear
like
you.
the early 70s. I was too young to even notice at that time because I was
I
probably
get you.
listening to the Osmonds.
Well, let me just say, because we're getting a hell of a lot of people commenting here, I can see we are broadcasting to multiple platforms. So shouts out to Big Man Boy on YouTube who's watching, as always. My personal profile and also on Inspire and Be Inspired. If you look at the description of the talk, there should be a link that will take you over to Inspire and Be Inspired. If you all go to that, then maybe you'll all be able to communicate and read one another's comments, because I can see the amalgamation of all of the comments, but depending on where you are, some of you guys might only see some of them. Okay, so I just thought I'd point that out. Shouts out to Paul Spring. How are you, brother? I was only thinking about you yesterday, believe it or not. We need to talk. And Angela is saying your era. Jeff Jefferson as well, my good friend, is watching, saying it's awesome. We're just scratching the surface. We're just getting into this. Could be a long one, guys, so do stick around. Okay, so a little bit of
I'm going to say
housekeeping.
yo to Richie. You tuned in.
Okay,
And also Lance. Yeah, Mike Allen, definitely. Yeah, Friday nights, Mike Allen.
wicked. So Gavin can see all the comments now, and I will bring them up as we're going along. So the jazz funk. So at some point then, the evil sound of acid house reared its ugly head. So I'm assuming yourself and Aston might have been responsible for you getting into it then.
Partly, yeah. I think I could blame Aston a little bit.
Hmm.
And obviously, I bought the turntables off of him, his old ones. I'm a Jewish kid, so I got some money for my mitzvah,
Okay.
and it's like, Mum, I'm going to spend my mitzvah money on these turntables. What are you doing? What are you doing? That's for your
And that
future.
money, excuse my ignorance, is that money meant to take you through into university or
Or
something?
something like that. She's like, that money's for your future, but it so was.
Yeah.
Those decks were like the best investment I probably could have ever spent that money on.
Hmm.
And
Brilliant.
yeah, so you're saying Acid House came along, and actually, I remember Aston at that time was working. Do you remember Double Trouble?
Hmm.
So that was another one where it was like Aston said, "Oh, do you want to come up to the studio?" Because he was like, they're sort of assistant engineer for Lee and Mike and Carl when they were doing all the Double Trouble stuff.
Hmm.
So Aston said, "Do you want to come up to the studio?" And again, it was like, "Oh, I just want to be doing this, making records and stuff." And back then, it was like, we didn't have laptops, and kids are so lucky now that you just any old laptop you can just make a banging tune. Back then, you really needed a proper studio, and you needed,
Hmm.
a sampler was thousands of pounds, and a couple of grand back then. You could buy a car for the same price as probably a decent sampler. So, I just wanted to be doing this stuff, and my opportunity came when I was playing. I was already DJing, and played a few raves. And one of the early raves I played was a rave called Fantasy in Reigate,
Hmm.
which was I would say one of the last very proper raves where it was a real battle with the police in Reigate. I think my
Hmm.
friend Simon's listening, who he was there, and the police turned up and there was a riot with the security and everything, and in the end they just had to let it go on because there was like thousands of people there, sort of standing outside this field, and they were just like, "Go and have your party." So I played this party and I met a guy called Nick who was one of the organisers, and Nick said, "Oh, I've got a studio at home. Do you want to come and try making some of this house music with me?" Because he sort of dabbled around, and he made sort of like psychedelic rock sort of stuff, but he fancied having a go at some house, and he thought, "Oh, I'll team up with this Gav DJ Face."
Hmm. So you say that because I need to know. I heard someone say something recently, sheer coincidence. There was an extension of DJ Face. Was it just DJ Face, and did I misinterpret what they were saying? Was there more to the name DJ Face?
No, just DJ Face.
Oh, I heard something else. It was something like the man, the face, or something like that. I must have been getting something twisted. Okay, so do continue. Forgive me.
No, that's
So
all right.
Nick in the studio.
Yeah, so Nick said, "Come to my studio," and then we just started working on like trying to make some house tracks. And I back then it was just like I didn't really know how to program drums or anything, so it was just like, well, let's take a loop off of there. We'll take a few sampled chords and things like that. And the first record we made was Only for the Headstrong. Do you know that one?
Okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So Only for the Headstrong, it was amazing because like a year or two ago, someone sort of shared a post that was on World of Echoes, which is a great group on Facebook. If people don't know it, I'm sure everyone
Yeah,
knows
it's
World of Echoes.
Kevorkian's group, isn't it?
Yeah. So someone had posted Only for the Headstrong on there, and Francois Kevorkian had written next to that track has never left my box. And I thought, bloody hell, Francois Kevorkian, and I mean, I'm a massive Francois fan. He's one of the best DJs I've ever heard. And for him to say my record, my first ever record, when I didn't even have a clue what I was doing, and he said that record has never left his box, on this thing. And I was like, wow. I think it got
It's
onto
insane.
Tony, what's his name? Yellow
Humphreys.
Orange Records. Was Tony Humphreys? He put it on his Zanzibar album as well. That track.
Hmm.
So it's kind of, I think, a bit of like a New York sort of underground classic
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
that I didn't find out about till only like quite recently, a couple of years ago.
It's crazy because you were all you. So you were that was your taste of things, and then was it just a case of churning out as much as you could, as often as you could? So where were you getting your money from apart from the bar mitzvah? What was your 9 to 5?
The bar mitzvah, yeah. Well, the
What
bar
was the
mitzvah
9 to 5?
ran out quite quickly. So yeah, I was DJ. From oh, and actually, I've forgotten to mention something. I was a hairdresser. I came out of school and I was a hairdresser, and I worked for Tony and Guy. So
Okay.
that's where I was earning money, and then all my money was going on records. So I worked at Tony and Guy in Covent Garden. Come lunch hour, I'd be going down to City Sounds in Holborn. do you ever go in there, Dave? City
Yeah, where Dave was.
You want this one, mate? You want this one? It's a
Yeah.
bullet. And you get home, you're like, why did I buy this?
Shout out to Mr. Silby. Yes, yes.
Yeah, and I think from even before House, I was sort of shopping there, and I was buying more hip hop from him. But like Eric B. and Rakim Stetsasonic and stuff like that. And I remember buying a couple of House albums there. Like there's one called Acid Tracks. Oh, there was a few albums. It wasn't so much the 12s. It was like, oh, I quite like some of this stuff. And back then, in the London scene, this I'm talking about 84, 85, around about that time. No, it would have been later when I was working there. 86, 87. This is. There was a couple of house records, like Marshall Jefferson, Move Your Body, or Farley Jackmaster Fun. There was a few house records, Colonel Abrahams, but there wasn't really any house scene. Those were just played alongside, your Grandmaster Flash records or your Rare Grooves, and it was all just dance music.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a big influence on me is I used to go to like Delirium back in the day,
Right.
which was what was the Astoria,
Mm-hmm.
which is now Tottenham Court Road's Crossrail station. They've knocked it all down, which is a great shame because I think that was one of the most brilliant clubs in London.
I can't even remember if I ever went there. It's
Delirium,
all a blur to me.
There was Opera House, which is Philip's salon.
Mm-hmm. Well, I used to work for Philip when he did the Mud Club at Bagley's. I had a residency there.
Yeah, I used to do the Mud Club as well. Not Bagley's. I fell out with him by then. That's another funny story we can get to.
Okay, let's because
it's always a funny story with Philip Salon.
We'll all be familiar with the scene at the time, but I want to focus really on what you specifically were doing yourself. So let's try and focus on your.
Yeah, but I'd say those were my influences that sort of
Okay.
musically, that sort of like when I came to sort of DJ, and like my first ever DJ gig was I was working in a hair salon, and one of the guys who came in to have his hair cut, and actually I think he just fancied one of the birds who worked in the salon, so he was in quite a lot. His name was Tarquin, and Tarquin.
He sounds like a one.
He's probably listening.
Easy, Tarquin.
Will be now I've mentioned him. Someone will say, "Oh, Tarquin." This. So yeah, Tarquin put on this rave called Weekend World, which was one of the big rave, and he worked with Biology, and his first ever rave. He knew that I DJ'd a bit. I don't know. We've been talking about music, something. So he gave me a spot, a Weekend World. I mean, back then it wasn't like it is now. You could name all the DJs probably on one hand. There was Fabio Groove Rider, Cole Cox, Mickey Finn, Jumping Jack Frost. You could name them all. And so, to be given a shot back then, I mean, I was really lucky because I actually, it's all one of those cases of who you know, rather than what you know. And he gave me a shot playing at the Weekend World party. And then because there wasn't that many DJs around, when other people were putting on raves, it's like, oh yeah, DJ Face, he was at Weekend World, he was all right. Let's get him, And so the rave DJing came out of that, and I was sort of like one of the main rain dance DJs. I think I played nearly all the rain dance parties.
Because I also see Bones was on there, Tony, that blew me away, and also Wally was DJing back then as well. Also.
Yeah, Wally and Bones, we all used to play together at the Pirate Club. Pirate Club, it started in Camden. It was like a little castle. That's why I think it was like the Pirate Castle.
Okay.
And they did the Roller Express. But yeah, I used to DJ a lot and hang out a lot with Wally. Wally and I were sort of like on the deck, sort of like every week or traveling somewhere together.
It's crazy. I'd known Wally for so long
before, or something like that.
I'd known Wally for a while through the Pressure Connection before I really, got wind of that. And we will talk a little bit later about his involvement with you making tunes. So I guess, were you getting to travel outside of London a lot?
So I just got to say green umbrella stands, and Wally will know what I'm talking about.
Okay.
Sorry, what was your question?
No, I was asking, did you get to travel outside of the M25 much, or wasn't there really much going on then?
No, every week. The rave days, I was up and down the M1 every weekend somewhere. Played a lot in Coventry and Birmingham.
Okay. So you would have done Amnesia?
Yeah, and the Dome used to play there, and there was a few sort of like after hours sort of places around there as well. And then up north, I was doing like Resurrection, which was up in Edinburgh. And then down south as well. I mean, back in those days, it was almost like there was something on nearly every night of the week back in those days.
Yeah.
I mean, especially in London, but you still find yourself going down to Worthing or somewhere. I played Stearns a few times. That was an amazing club.
Brilliant. Well, still lots of comments coming in. Hi to Keith Best. Lance Pierce is commenting. There are a few more people passing through and saying hello as well. So again, thank you for being here,
Yeah,
everyone.
Keith I've known since biology days, so 30 years I go back to Keith.
Wicked.
Well, yeah,
So you mentioned about Only for the Headstrong. That would have been under the Psychotropic title, pseudonym. So that was just yourself and Nick together as
yeah,
Psychotropic.
yeah, we didn't really ever get any vocalists in. We just used like little samples and stuff. I mean, and our setup was like so basic. We had an S900 sampler, a Casio keyboard, like a CZ101, I think it was, or something, an effects machine, like a little Boss reverb, and an 8-track tape. So we were doing a lot of the stuff, just putting it to tape to free up the sample room, because
Right.
it was like an S900 and it had like 8 seconds.
So many.
So you do your drum loop, then you put the drum loop to tape, and then you do the next thing. But maybe that was all part of the sound. And I think there's something nice about having very little equipment to work with as well. You know, I think nowadays it's like you have too many things, and you might have all these rooms full of keyboards, but you sort of really get to know your equipment well when you just like and what you can do with it when you just have like one or two things.
I definitely, and everybody was. You talked about influences back then. There are a lot of records that sounded the same. There are also a lot of records that sounded completely different, because some happy accidents, a lot of influences taken from, and then all of a sudden you'd hear a new sound, because it was still, some of it was still pretty cutting edge, wasn't it? You'd hear a new sound, and then that sound was getting released on a lot of the next batch of tunes. So how much output was there as Psychotropic?
I think we probably made about 10 or 12 tracks. I can check actually. Recently, Nick put it all up on Spotify. So I think there's roughly about 12 tracks or something like that.
Well, let's not get too bogged down in specifics, because otherwise we'll be backwards and forward to Discogs all the way through this.
Something I think that Psychotropic might be one of the first people who did it, if not the first, was again, we didn't really know what we were doing that much, so we took some samples, and I remember one of the stab sounds I sampled was off. Remember "Reach Up to Mars" on Apexton?
No, I can't. Not off the top of my head.
You know it if you heard it. It's one of those old house tracks. And Joy Sims' "All in All" was another one,
Okay.
where we just sampled one stab, one chord, not like a riff or anything, just one chord, and then we play these riffs on the keyboard and try and sustain them for like 5 minutes. So the way we do that would be like filtering the stab chords. And I suppose it came from the acid thing. I didn't have anything to make acid sounds, but I wanted that filtering thing. And I don't know if there's any records before Psychotropic that filtered stab chords. So I might have invented filtered stab chords, but I don't know for sure. Somebody else might say, "Oh no, this record came out before Psychotropic that did it." But I'd be interested to know if anyone did it before us. So taking a filtered chord, taking a sampled chord, and then filtering it over, like a few minutes, and working the filter on it, and that was the way we made Psychotropic records. It was all about smoking a couple of joints and just filtering, and be like, wow, that sounds good.
Yeah, because there was, you say about that, there was maybe a little bit of smoke flying around from time to time back in the early days.
In the studio?
For most people, yeah.
Yeah, oh my God. I was a really heavy smoker, and there's some other projects that I did that were like, it depended who I was working with. I did a lot of stuff with Matt Jam, for instance. Matt doesn't drink, doesn't smoke, so it was a much healthier project for me to work on. and then I did. Do you know Nathan Lockett, who did Baffled? So Nathan and I did a project called Head Top. So I'm just jumping through projects here, but just on the smoking thing, we used to just like constantly, the whole day and night, and we did long sessions. They go until 6 a.m. Till we couldn't even focus on the screen anymore.
Well, you mentioned 2 different projects there.
Mm.
At some point, we will start to talk more about as the career progressed.
Mm.
It's impossible for us to document everything and everyone that
You
you've
don't need
worked
to,
with.
mate. I mean,
So
skim through
let's
some
talk
stuff.
about there would have been a point where the DJing slowed down for you,
Mm.
and you and everyone else kind of their meteoric rise to fame kind of completely overshadowed yours
Mm.
because all of a sudden they were everywhere and then you weren't. So what happened there?
I was smoking weed and playing with synths.
Okay.
So yeah, I started. That was when I started buying kit, and I was, for the money I was making DJing, it all pretty much went into keyboards and kit, and then every day I was just in the studio, just trying to make tracks. And there was a period off after Psychotropic where it was just a bit of experimentation myself and trying to learn how to put a track together. So
Were you having to pay studio time? Or
I,
were you working in lieu for your studio time, or were you having to pay for it all?
no, I just bought my own equipment and
Okay.
just working from first at my flat and or no, first my girlfriend's house. I was staying at her house, and then I just set up a little setup in there, and then I had a flat where um, I was sharing a flat with somebody, and we just had a bedroom each. We didn't have a lounge, so my bedroom was just full of keyboards and not full, but
And you're a complete one man
records.
band with regards to the production, the mix down, and the mastering, or
And
did
I'm still DJing a bit, but not like you're saying. Some of the other DJs were becoming international superstars, where I'd just be focused more on making tunes really at home and getting stoned.
were you getting a name for yourself then, so that other people were like nudging you, saying, "Can you come and do this for me?" Were you doing session keys at any
Not
point?
not not at that point, not yet. That came a bit later. Um, I had that studio at home, and then the guy I was living with turned out to be a complete asshole, and all the money that I'd sort of been giving him every week to pay our rent, he he was meant to be going and paying it into the bank account for our landlord, and he hadn't. So suddenly I got evicted from this house and moved back to my mum's. And you remember when you came over to my mum's, and that was when I met yourself, and that was when I started engineering for other people, because I was really starting to hone my craft a bit and actually
Okay.
um, be able to put tracks together, and sort of just started to know what I was doing a little bit then. So that would have been, I think, very early 90s, 92, 93.
hmm Dalkeith Grove.
Yeah.
Yeah, because one of the projects was Dalkeith Grove, or was it the track or the project that
I
you
think
gave the name to?
was that the one I did with Booker T, I think, was the Dalkeith crew.
Dalkeith Crew. That was it.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't. I didn't realize that was you and Booker, because back then, I was, and a lot of the stuff was being distributed through Moe's. That's how I met Andy Bailey.
Mm, mm.
So there wasn't a lot of information on them. Maybe that was what's the word? That was on purpose. A lot of them were white labels, promos, and things like that. So it would have been much after that I would have really
Yeah.
put your name to those projects, if that makes
This
sense.
is this is the time I met Brian, and we became Catch Records and Banana Republic. So
Okay, so we
I'd
need
moved
to know about how that happened. Then we need
I'd
to know
moved
all
home
about that.
off. Yeah, after having my studio being evicted from my flat, and I moved in with Ron Tom for a while, Metamorphosis Records,
Okay, not familiar with that
and
person.
you remember Metamorphosis,
Not
big drum and
off the
bass
top of my
label.
head.
So any drum and bass heads would know Metamorphosis, because it was
Okay,
one of the
well, I
great.
am not.
No, but again, you'd probably recognise some of the tracks because you've been to the clubs sort of like probably in the day. And I put out an EP there on Metamorphosis Records. That was like my first ever sort of solo project after Psychotropic.
hmm
And then I moved my studio home, and I was doing a session for um, Totally. These guys used to put on clubs and stuff, and then they wanted to start making some records. And they hooked me up with this keyboard player called Brian Tharm.
Okay.
So Brian came in as a session player on a studio session that I was doing, like producing for somebody. and Brian and I hit it off straight away, and we're like, yeah, let's do some stuff together. And
Could you? How are you skills wise on the keys? Is he? Are you evens or is he more
Brian's a proper
prolific?
keyboard player. I mean, I can find chords. I know a bit of theory. I can find some chords. I can play a bass line. Brian's a proper player. You know, you go and sit in a jazz bar and listen to him play. You know, I'd survive about 5 minutes, and then you've heard everything I can do. But I'm
Okay.
fine if I'm left to my own devices. I fish around and I'll find something. You know, I just keep on working at it till it sounds right. And you know, when you've listened to a lot of music, you sort of know what you're trying to get. And then when you've got a little bit of knowledge, you can find it.
But Brian was the real deal.
But Brian, I'll just say, just play that. We're just playing some Lonnie Liston record. Can you play that chord there?
Wicked. So
You know,
you started working together.
yeah. And we were really prolific. I mean, I think we were probably putting out a record a month. And then in between, we were engineering for lots of other people as well. There
So
was,
whose idea was it to give birth to Catch Records?
I think we just got tired of going around trying to sign stuff. You know, you sort of go cap in hand round to the labels and like, will you sign my record and stuff? And you mentioned Andy Bailey at Moe's. I mean, Andy was like the silent third partner of Catch Records in a way, because he was working at Moe's Distribution. And yeah, he worked really closely with Brian and I. Just like we send him the DAT and he'd take care of everything, you know, and that's a big deal, you know, sort of like getting all the distribution sorted and all that sort of stuff. So he was like a really important part of the Catch setup. So Brian and I could just stay in the studio, focus on that, and you know, we'd finish the track and we go and cut it, and then just go and get the masters sent to Andy, and he'd get everything pressed and sorted.
He was the man. He was the man who can. I got to give a lot of love to
He still
Andy.
is. He still is.
He would go on to be quite instrumental in my own career. So thank you, Andy, for all your help. And I think it was through Andy how we really, you and I, properly connected then.
If you want to see sort of like you said, I'm a bit of an unsung hero of like the garage scene or whatever. I think Andy Bailey could, you know, we could easily say the same for him.
Yeah,
More so maybe because he's helped a lot of people, I think.
most definitely. Yeah, his journey. Maybe I'll have a conversation with him. I'm not sure he's the kind of guy who'd want to sit in front of the camera. I'm pretty sure I have asked him in the past and he's turned it down.
He's good on radio. I've heard him present radio shows. He's got a good radio voice.
No, not a TV face. He said it, not
A
me.
radio face, yeah. He's got a
He
good
said
face
it,
for
not
radio.
me. So Catch Records was the outlet. Catch Productions, Banana Republic. Again, so many. Why so many different pseudonyms?
There was a reason at the time.
And it wasn't to avoid the tax man.
No, Catch Records was the label. And we were never Catch Productions. So I think it was just because
There was never Catch Productions, so I got that
my
completely
sister
wrong.
was a graphic designer, and she had loads of like bags and stuff, you know, for inspiration for her graphic design. I remember a Banana Republic bag sitting there on the floor, and I said, "Oh, that's a good name. Why don't we call ourselves Banana Republic?" And back then, I think it wasn't even really a shop in the UK. It was a shop from the States. I don't think sort of like early 90s, Banana Republic was even around in the UK. So we just thought, oh, Banana Republic, that'll do.
That sounds good.
Yeah.
So some of the early successes that you would say let's go from 92 to 95, something that springs to mind immediately as one of that you're most proud of.
Well, probably we did a lot of collaborations.
Okay.
So there's Brian and I, and when we were doing remixes and stuff for other people, we were just Banana Republic, or we'd release a few things as Banana Republic. But then we did a lot. We had like Tough Jam. We did a few things with them. So Catch the Feeling was a big one, and of course TJR Just Gets Better. So TJR was Tough Jam Republic, but most people just think it's Tough Jam Records or something. Again,
So for clarification, that's yourself, Brian, Matt Jam, Carl Toffenoff, Brian,
exactly, and Xavier on the
Xavier on
vocals.
vocals.
And yeah, I mean that was very much all four of us, sort of brought something to the table with that record. I'd really say that everybody, that record is just where we'd worked together a lot. And back then, Carl and Matt would, every week they were hiring our studio, so they'd hire Brian as a keyboard player, me as an engineer, and all of the remixes that they did, I think, up until they got their own studio sorted, Brian and I were engineering and playing keys. But you know, it wasn't like we were making the records for them, because Carl and Matt were very capable.
Hmm.
And especially Carl, he'd disappear into his headphones, like, and start programming and like playing keyboards. In fact, the machine over there, the MPC, I did most of the drums, but very much under Carl and Matt's guidance of how they wanted their drums to sound, because their drums don't sound like my drums.
Yeah.
So they'd have their own discs, their own sounds, and then I'd program the MPC, because neither of them can program an MPC, but they just love the swing off of that machine, which is that old one over there.
While you're doing that, I've Pax says Banana Republic Days Go By, absolute bullet. That was Judy Obeya on vocals.
It was. Was that with that was with Bobby and Steve, I think, as well.
Okay.
I think I have to check.
I'm not sure. Oh, well, I don't remember getting credit for it. Siobhan is watching. Hi, my love. She says, I only know Gavin for taking incredible photos. I feel I know nothing about music sometimes. Listen, that's why we have these conversations, and that's why the description says that Gavin is one of the most important and one of the most influential people in our scene, because he is directly and indirectly linked to so many things that a lot of people have even forgotten about or didn't know about. So what are you looking up there?
Okay, so it's Banana Republic and the Zoo Experience.
Okay.
Yeah, so that was done with Bobby and Steve.
Wow, I didn't know that. See, because by this time I was working on the radio and I was getting pure promos, and I've just white labels, unfortunately. So I've played that record for 20 years, 25 years, and I was oblivious that it was Bobby and Steve involved with that. So I have to give the Lavigne brothers credit. I remember Judy's name, but that was it.
Yeah, that was
Okay,
nice.
so
That was a nice project, because we did some of it at my house. And then, do you remember when they had an office on Shaftesbury Avenue in London?
yeah,
The back room was a recording studio. So we did half of it at my studio and half at Bobby's studio, which was nice, to sort of like go and work in somebody else's place and let somebody else take the reins with the engineering as well.
wicked. So in amongst it all, did you ever get to start? You were so far immersed in the production then. Did you ever get the itch to want to go out and start DJing? But because by this time, the Soulful House scene had erupted, Garage City was doing big things, Camden Palace. You never wanted to get
Not
out
on
there
the
and start
UK,
playing?
not on the UK garage scene. I used to go out quite a lot. I used to hang out, with Matt and go to gigs with
Yeah,
him,
but
or
before
Norris.
then, Garage City, you know.
I did DJ at Garage City once.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I played there. But I used to do a thing called The Park on a Sunday in Kensington, which I think is long gone now. But there are probably a few people listening who might remember The Park. And Sundays we did a thing called Relish,
Right.
with Dennis DMAC, Steve Carbarron, they were the promoters. And then Matthew B used to DJ there. He was quite regular with me. Master P.
Hmm.
I'm not sure Bones might have played there. I'm not sure. Richie will know.
Hmm.
Um,
Well, Danny asks a question. We can
Danny
he's
Forfall.
saying, Danny 44, how did you get a lot of your inspiration during the Tough Jam days? So you said obviously that the lads brought something to the table. Because it must be very difficult. I'll let you answer it in a second, forgive me, but it must be very difficult to hold certain things back when you are working in collaborations, because as you say, otherwise then it just becomes a Gavin and Brian production.
Exactly, yeah. And they almost got us in trouble sometimes.
What,
It's like,
not helping too much?
not for my stuff, but at that time we were producing as well for Dream Team.
Hmm.
So Carl would be like, "Did you use that same snare sound?" on on the Dream Team record that you used on our record.
I don't remember. I don't recall that. I didn't know that you were working with them. Was that a secret?
Well, I don't think our name was sort of like on the record or anything.
Oh, I didn't know. I thought it was all. I
Probably
thought it was all
engineered by,
Timmy.
or probably engineered by or something.
Hmm.
But Timmy again, he's a great producer, Timmy, and you know, again, it was like I engineered. I didn't program all their stuff for them or anything like that.
Okay. So let's get to Danny's
I've got
question.
a funny story. Oh no, let's get to
Inspirations.
Danny's question. I'll come back to my funny
Yeah,
story.
inspiration. Where did the inspiration come from?
More from probably the US garage. I think definitely things like Mike Delgado, Roger Sanchez. You know, what was that big Roger Sanchez tune?
Time to stop.
Hello, yeah, yeah, that tune, those beats. You know, that
And
was.
Todd Edwards as well.
I mean, this is before it sort of became. When it was UK garage, it was us sort of trying to make like that. We played all those American records sped up.
Yeah.
Todd Edwards, Save My Love.
Hmm.
You know, Cole Brown has been trying to make that record for the last 20 years.
Yeah.
He absolutely loves Todd Edwards, you know, and you can really hear that in his music. And yeah, I think the inspiration was like, it was that American sound that was just a bit dirtier and a bit sped up. And then, I don't know if then it kind of got merged in with like maybe the jungle thing was starting to happen at the same time. And those sort of heavy B lines sort of came to meet those skippy American sort of swingy beats. Do you know what I
And
mean?
that's where you mentioned Nathan. That's moving more towards that kind of sound.
Baffled sound.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And we made some tracks with Baffled. We did the Baffled Republic ones, which still sound all right, actually. I remember listening to that like a year ago. And the B-side, there's a track called Sweetness, which sounds really good. We've cut
Well,
Michael
everyone
Wyckoff.
was always pushing the envelope because then you've got like Tim and Omar, of course, and whatever. You know, that's the whole story of the progression of the UK sound is, you know, it's everybody more or less knows it. But you were still there. Was there any? Tell me the point, because I know it would have happened where you stepped back and you thought, I'm not really feeling this.
I do. I remember that point exactly. It was going to Ministry one night with Matt, and it was like proper moody. And the scene had sort of changed in London. And what was like the sort of champagne, let's party scene had become like this sort of moody, sort of underground speed garage sort of scene. I don't know, maybe people were doing different drugs or something, but I was just like, I don't really like this. I don't really want to be making this music anymore because I don't really like the scene. And
So was this towards the end of the 90s?
yeah,
Or
I mean, it was
mid-90s?
the time that I started Copyright.
Because before then, before we jump into that, you would have had huge success with Tough Jam. Yeah, with Tough Jam, with like the Mystique, for example.
Yeah, because
Because if you guys, Mystique became the huge. It wasn't off the back of their R&B original. It was the UK garage track that made them, right?
there was a point where Carl and Matt were working together, Brian and I were working together, and then we came together and it was like Tough Jam, Republic, and then they got their own studio, and they weren't getting on brilliantly. I mean, I can say this now because it's so long ago, and I'm sure they'd be fine.
Well, I don't think it's a secret.
So yeah, I mean, this is what I was going to say. There's like there was days they come into the studio and we'd be there all day, and they wouldn't speak to each other the whole day, and that's quite weird, you know, when you're making a piece of music together. And it would be like Matt would say, "Gavin, can you tell Carl to make?"
Really, that bad?
It was awkward, and
Wow. Okay, well, let's not expose too much of that. So was this around the Mystique time then?
But as I said, it's a long time ago, and you can look back on it, it's quite funny. And at the same time, I think Brian and I, you know, we'd had enough of each other.
Okay.
And Brian decided he wanted to go off and do like by himself, because he was getting asked by everybody at that point to come and be a session keyboard player. So, all the people that we were working with together, they were doing their own things. And, they were thinking, well, we'll just get Brian, come and do the keys. And so Brian decided, right, I'm going to go my own way. And this was all at the same time as actually, no, this wasn't copyright time yet. Because Matt and I, we had maybe there was a couple more years where Carl and Matt split up. Brian and I split up. And then I think maybe Brian went off and did keys for Carl. And then Matt was coming into the studio with me. And we were doing loads of remixes as Matt Jam and DJ Face.
Okay.
And we'd done loads. I mean, it was like doing Artful Dodger and Rowena Johnson, Missy Elliott. So I think we done quite a few, and then Mystique came in. And Mystique back then was like just a band that someone had put together, like a girl band, and they had this R&B track that they hadn't released anything, and they said, "Would you be up for doing like a house mix on this?" So we did a remix of the Mystique, and it was Matt and I and another keyboard player because I wasn't really too tight with Brian at that time. And this guy Jason Silver came in. He played the keys, and when we made the record, Matt and I were just like, "Yeah, this is good," because Matt would just play it out at the weekend and people going crazy. So the girl from the record company says, "Yeah, your mix is it's blowing up," because Matt has shared it with a couple of people. So we're going to release yours as the single.
Yeah.
So Mystique, they sort of abandoned the R&B thing and became like a UK garage thing for their first record.
Because I think they were trying to follow in the footsteps of All Saints, weren't they? All Saints were quite big around that time.
Yeah, I think they were, yeah. And then the second record they made
was doing really well. Booker did fantastic remixes of the All Saints. And then the Mystique came along. Chris has asked.
Booker was absolutely smashing it at that time.
He could 95 to 97 were the golden years for Booker T.
He did an amazing mix on Busy's Party.
Yeah.
The Soul to Soul mix he did. There was a De-Influence thing that he did that I used to play the hell out of.
It was just that sound, that stabby sound, the drums, just relentless. Really would. Remind me, hi Matt, how you going, mate?
I would say Booker was an inspiration, and Grant Nelson and all those guys, to me as well. I mean, not just the American thing. What was happening here, I wouldn't say we were right at the pinnacle of it, because there was people like Grant and that, and Joe Masafia, who were making amazing records at that time that we looked to as well for inspiration.
Well, there's quite a list of people, and I'll throw Danny Foster into that
totally
as well, totally. So yeah, remind me of the name of the Mystique, because it's gone clean out of my head.
Why do friends and lovers take so long, and then they come around? Finally, It wasn't on your radar, mate. too poppy for you.
No, I was championing it on Choice at the time. Yeah, heavily. So Jeremy Braithwaite's here. Hi, mate. It's putting Julian's name into there. Julian was before a lot of these guys. I remember Julian was putting out some wicked tunes.
A Derbyshire tune. I mean, that still gets dropped. I still hear that all the time. Julian Jonah you're talking about, right?
Yeah. I actually spoke to Julian, trying to have a conversation with him about 12 months ago. He's abroad now, and he's like, yeah, I'm up for that. And then kind of the steamer ran out of the conversation.
Was Julian also Juju on Ozone? Was that Julian?
I'm not sure.
I don't know, he can tell us up there on the comments.
Schooley is saying we were one of the first to champion the Mystique. Oh yes, indeed.
Thank you.
I can even picture the sleeve, a grey sleeve with just Mystique in the middle of it on there, because battered to pieces. So this is what I love. We're having there's a lot of backwards and forwards of the conversations. Paul Farris is here. Good morning, my friend.
Ooh, on the other side of the world.
How are you, mate? Nice to hear from you. Enjoying the chat. Lots of great memories, Paul. when we can coordinate it.
Paul is
We have
actually an amazing
to have one with
photographer
you,
as
bro.
well. So yeah, like me, sort of went from the music to the photography.
I was talking to Paul recently,
I'm
giving
always
him
watching
some
Paul's videos.
assistance with his website. But and Houseaholics, such a talented man. Gavin, let me shoot a defect. Gavin, let me shoot a defected event soon. Is saying Houseaholics, if I'm reading that correct. Okay, so thank you for all of your participation, everybody. How are you feeling, Gav? All right,
Yeah,
nice and
good, good.
relaxed. Wonderful.
Yeah.
So let's get it towards the end of the 90s then, because that's the era we're talking about.
No, we've passed
Working
that
with
already because Catch Catch probably went up to about 93, 94, I think.
90s, the end of the 90s. Mystique's got to be 98, 99, surely.
Oh look, there we go. Banana Republic and Zoo Experience. Yeah, that was the one you mentioned. That's 98.
Don't you get stuck in that computer fact checking. Pete, listen, guys, when you've watched this afterwards, go and do some digging, because we can put some meat to the bones of this conversation. Gavin
I
did
can't
ask me.
remember all the things I've done, and I've sat there
So
and
many,
been like,
so many.
I know this tune. 1 minute, I think I made this. I've done that more than once.
Yeah, that's mad. That's madness. You did ask me, am I going to be playing any music? And I said no, because obviously, excuse the pun, the copyright issues. But yeah, definitely go away and check out his discography. So let's skip it forward then, because there's so much, let's get to the birth of copyright, how that came about, because Sam, you would have known from
something I want to
being on the
mention
DJ
before
circuit.
copyright. There was a project that, for me, was one of the best projects I ever did, and it was between that Matt Jam Lamont sort of stuff, and so like I said, I was getting really annoyed with the UK garage. So Nathan from Baffled, who I mentioned, we'd done a couple of projects together, and Nathan, I really enjoyed working in the studio with him. So we started off this project called Head Top. Did you get into the
Yeah.
Head Top stuff? So we did, first track was called Don Donna, and Matrix was like an A-B side. And then we did one called Mad Shit. And Mad Shit was like a crazy record that was kind of like UK garage mixed with Latin, mixed with like sort of just mad sampling and live players. And I love the Head Top project because Nathan would come into the studio, and I said earlier on, we used to smoke a lot. We wanted to make records to twist up Spoonie's mind. That was how Nathan would describe. So something that's a bit like UK garage, but just twist up sort of Carl and Spoonie and those people. Like, what is this music? Sort of,
Yeah.
and
Who didn't partake in smoking? They're like, where are you getting this from?
it was making UK garage on our own terms.
Good.
And it was loads of live musicians, and we spent a ridiculous amount on some of the tracks. We'd have like 6 or 7 players, and back then, we'd give people like a couple of £100 for coming in and playing keys or bass or whatever. So we'd spend loads of money on this. Wherever records we sold, that money just went straight back into Head Top. And we only released like 2 or 3 things out of about 15 tracks, and they're all sitting there on like a hard.
You got them on a DAT somewhere?
Oh yeah. I've got them.
Wow.
I've got most of the parts still and all that. So one day I'm going to come back to them.
Chris Hunter's saying it sounds like pre-New Yorican vibes, but this would have been after New Yorican Soul. New Yorican Soul was 97.
Yeah, just a little bit after that, but before I did the copyright stuff, I think. I remember taking Mad Shit.
I think. Yeah.
Mad Shit. I remember taking that to Miami. And then people coming up to me, yeah, I heard Giles Peterson play it. And then it was like sort of Spoonie would play it, and then Giles Peterson would play it, and Doc Scott, or some other mad DJ. And it was like a real cross genre. And that was exactly what we were trying to do with that project. And then sort of like maybe 2 years ago, Sam Devine's boyfriend, or no, husband, he was her husband then, Hatch, DJ Hatch. he said, that project you did with Nathan, I used to work in a record shop down in Croydon. He used to come in with this head top stuff. Whatever happened to that? I said, oh, it's all sitting on the hard drive somewhere. And I played him the stuff, and he was like, mate, you've got to release this. You've got to do something with it. So one day I will. I will, because I really love that head top project. And Nathan and we fell out for a long, long time. And
I'm seeing a pattern emerge here.
so, yeah. You know what it is? When you work with somebody in the studio a lot, it's that cabin fever thing, you know? Mm-hmm. And maybe it's just like, it's quite an emotional thing, making a record.
Yeah.
And yeah, and then when I spoke to Hatch, I thought, Hatch says, I'm going to call Nathan right now. And we're sitting in Croatia on the balcony, like 6 a.m. in Croatia. He phones up, yeah, it's Hatch. All right, Nath. Yeah, I'm here with Gavin. Just heard this head top project. You need to put that out.
It howled out the olive branch, so to speak.
Yeah, he did. And then I spoke to Nathan. I said, look, I'll give you a chat. I'll call you when I get back. We've sort of talked about sort of coming back to a bit, but we're both doing other stuff. Mm-hmm. You know, I'm sort of doing my photography. Nathan does sort of like video link up stuff. So one day I'll come back to that head top project. But that was, I just thought I'd squeeze that in, because for me, that was one of the most creative times, I think. Mm-hmm. You know, when I was doing music, sort of like coming out of the garage and almost like with a sort of militant vibe that we just wanted to twist people up with the music we were making. Like, what the hell is this? But it's sick musicianship and like heavy beats.
Well, that's something that's definitely you would need to do after being so groundbreaking from the beginning, from 10 years prior to then getting stuck in the hamster wheel, churning out the records, and it does get a bit repetitive, doesn't it, after a while?
Yeah, totally.
Mm-hmm. Totally. So you mentioned about Miami, 97, 98, the glory years. That's when I would have started going to Miami. We would have known each other quite a lot by then. Yeah, you know, incredible times in Miami. Chris Hunter mentioned about New York and Soul, infamous parties that we went to, Masters at Work parties. Defected wasn't a thing then. It was still AM, PM. You know, they were releasing all the huge tracks and whatever.
At the Masters at Work party when they did it at the Opium Bar, the outdoor one?
Yeah.
Mate, that's probably one of the most memorable parties of my life.
With the tiered seating around the end.
And they had Roy Ayers was there, and James Ingram, and...
Oh, no, I'm thinking of a different one. I'm not sure if that was the Opium Gardens. I think... I may be wrong. I could be wrong, but I think the Opium Gardens was a few years after that, because the Opium Gardens was a little bit more Asian vibe. The one you're talking about was a Def Mix Masters at Work where Roy Ayers and India were performing, possibly, because I've got it all on video. I'm not sure of the venue. I may be wrong, but you know, by the by.
The Opium Garden was the outdoor one that's sort of like a circle, and then there's like steps going up.
Yeah. But that I don't think that's where Roy Ayers performed, because I've got a video.
Because I remember standing next to him.
He must have been performing every year then. So we're talking about two different parties.
Yeah.
Okay.
What an amazing venue that is! I love that place.
Incredible. Well, one of the Opium parties.
I saw Francois Kevorkian DJ there, and it just blew my mind. You know, the way he'd mix a set together, and it was like playing like 50 different genres of music all in one set. They're all just seamlessly mixed together, and I was like, wow, this is a proper DJ.
It was next level out there. I mean, for myself, I was really at the beginning of my journey, starting to get a little bit of notoriety for myself. You're kind of 10 years in by this time, or 7-8 years in. Were you still as starstruck out there, aside from being in awe of the DJs? Did you still think, wow, what's going on?
I'd been making UK garage, and I think the first time I went out there, it was like when I just started Copyright, and maybe we had our first single with Copyright back then. We were saying about this earlier on, about it was 3 of us. There was me and Sam, and there was another guy called Scotty, Scotty de la Hoya, and Scotty, he went off and got like a dream job at Diesel, and it was a toss-up whether to carry on with the music or go and do the career. So, but the 3 of us went out, and yeah, I was totally starstruck, you know, because I sort of been making all the UK garage, but I really loved all the US garage, and that was sort of like what I started making the UK garage. That was my influence. As I said, it was the Mike Delgado, Masters at Work, Kenny Dope, all those people were just next level to me.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, and I went out there with our first record, and I think Sam knew Brian Tappert a little bit. So Brian didn't sign our first record, but we sort of made that connection in Miami.
Mm-hmm.
And then we sort of became part of the Sulfuric family for a few years. Before we were Copyright and we were Undefected, we were really tight with Brian. And then that, the early days of Sulfuric, and that was great because it was Axwell from what's the EDM group?
Mafia, Swedish House Mafia.
Axwell. There was Knee Deep,
Mm-hmm.
Hard Soul, obviously John Julius Knight, Brian and Mark Pomeroy, and it was just like we were so lucky to be in that stable, and yeah, he didn't sign our first record, but I think it was Bulow. We made one of our early Copyright ones
Mm-hmm.
that Brian signed.
Was that with Shovel?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Shovel. If you're listening.
So you talk about the Miami moment, and I will always remember this, and I've spoken to it about it to Craig Bartlett as well, Sporting and America.
I know America, yeah.
Craig. We were all sat around at that Masters at Work party, and we started to hear in the background, "Where Would You Be?" coming in.
Yeah.
And we were all just so excited and so happy. And we were all the UK contingent were there at the Opium Gardens. That's how I believe I remember it anyway.
That's the first record Brian signed off of us, actually, before Bulow. Yeah.
And it was absolutely incredible. And we were so happy for you guys. We were just elated. It was typical. It was like, is it Goodfellas, the film, when it goes, oh yeah, I'm getting, I'm made, I'm one of those, and he's like, yeah, it's one of ours.
Brian is like, I mean, he's the loveliest guy, Brian, but he is like Mafia, isn't he, in a way? He's like Don Corleone of house, but not in a sort of like a way where he'd go out and shoot anybody. He's just. I
think he's got it in his locker.
But there's that Italian thing. I mean. He is like Joe Pesci too, isn't he?
Yeah, definitely. Well, at some point, Mark Wilkinson's passed through and said hello, word up, giving you some praise. Paul is still, Mr. Farris is still locked on, saying that was his favourite Miami ever. Incredible times. I don't want to get stuck in the romanticism about that.
I wish we could just dial back and go back to those days and just have one night back in Miami like it was back then.
20, 21, 22 years. It's insane to think about.
Yeah, that was around. Yeah, it was around 2000, definitely. Mm-hmm. Actually, somebody asked me what we were talking about. The questions you always get asked by interviewers, and one of them is like, "What's the best DJ set you ever heard?" And I don't know if it was that year, but it was around one of those Miamis of that time, and it was Dimitri upstairs at the Cameo.
Yeah.
Were you there that night?
Yeah.
I think Masters at Work were downstairs, and then Dimitri's had the upstairs bar.
Mm-hmm. But it was only a small little room.
Smallish. I mean, it was still probably 500 people or something. Everybody who was anybody was up there. So it was the most amazing DJ set I've ever heard. Up until that point.
Mad.
Dimitri, he probably is one of my favourite DJs out there.
Oh, lots of comments, lots of replies that I'm just reading here. Chris, yes, you're correct with your facts there, but I shan't mention them because it will take us off on another tangent.
I'm looking. Hang on.
To read them. Thank you to everybody passing through still. We are an hour and 10 minutes into the conversation, and somebody asked me earlier, is it being recorded? Yes, it will be available immediately as soon as we're finished on my Inspire and Be Inspired page. It will also be available on my YouTube channel, and I'll talk about that a little later on. So yeah, copyright. Then you became the golden boys of the scene. It was at the time that Sulfuric was going from strength to strength. They were having some huge hits. I remember actually seeing Defected posting something the other day. Have they signed their Sulfuric catalogue? Is that what's happened? So they posted a Disco Dust cover, and that was a huge tune back in the day. And then of course the birth of Track Source, and the landscape changed forever.
Yeah, I mean, Brian and Mark, the records that they were making on Sulfuric, they were just next level records, and they still sound amazing.
The UBP tracks that they made.
Oh my god, yeah, and the Michael Watford and He Is the Joy, Donna Allen, and that record, Brian gave us like his special mix of it. So when I DJ out with Sam, it's just one of those ones when it's a special party and the mood's right. That Here's the Joy mix just always comes out.
Timeless records, and everyone's got so many fun memories attached to all of those. For me, they're really important because they would have taken then me through into the Soul Heaven days, the Soul Heaven era. And I think specifically of parties in Birmingham, a residency that I had, and the birth of the funky house movement that you were at the front of. I mean, I don't know how you feel about the term funky house, because some people hate it, but for me, it defines a very specific sound. Some people don't like the term funky house, but it defines the music that was being played at the time.
All these sort of genres and stuff. You need to call it something so you can go into a record shop and say, have you got any funky house? You know, you got any filtered disco? Or so you do have to name it something. I mean, so
back then, funky house wasn't seen as a negative word. It wasn't seen as a swear word. And to me, I don't know how you feel about this. You were like the kings of that funky house sound. That's what you were putting out. And all my sets were like riddled with copyright tunes, you know. You could do no wrong.
I don't know. I mean, if we were kings, we were amongst a lot of other kings, because I can't say we were making better records than anybody else, and all those other people's records I used to play were our inspiration. People like Knee Deep, and Hard Soul back then, and obviously Brian and Mark, John Julius Knight, all those Sulfuric guys are. And of course, Masters of Work. I mean, all of us are. There isn't anybody who makes soulful or funky house that can't say they've not been inspired by Kenny and Louis.
No, definitely not.
Definitely not. I wouldn't put myself as a king, but we were holding our own, I'd say.
Yeah, most definitely.
Definitely not kings, but holding our own in that scene.
So then, because of the success of the production, was it your decision to capitalize on that and then start touring again behind the decks? Or was it someone else's decision?
No, I think the DJing thing with Sam, it just kind of happened sort of organically. People just started asking us to play, and maybe Brian Tapper and John Julius used to DJ a lot together. So if they were DJing, they say, let's get copyright, or let's get Knee Deep, or people from the stable. And then around that time, Tim Burnett, who what's Tim's name now? Because people will know him as Tim Burnett. Hang on. Sorry, it's just my...
Not Tim Deluxe.
No.
Tim Burnett from Milk and Two Sugars.
Milk and Two Sugars, yeah.
Yeah.
What's his name? Moody something.
I don't actually know.
I should know, but it's just my brain goes blank after talking for so much. Anyway, so M2S.
Modena, Jeremy's saying.
Modena, thank you. Tim, get a more catchy name that we can remember. Modena, yeah. So
see, I didn't even know that was Tim. That's how out the game I am.
So yeah, M2S, they took over our diary for before Defected sort of started managing DJs and stuff, because Defected was just like putting out records, and we weren't even in with Defected at that time. We were more in the Sulfuric camp. So yeah, we signed to M2S, and that was where the DJing thing. I say it's organically, but I would say Tim and Sharon, who ran M2S, they originally built the copyright sort of DJ thing. And then
again, I completely relate to that. I was behind you,
about
three tiers down. about
I think there
three
was a point
tiers
where they
down.
sort of just managed nearly everybody.
Hmm.
But we did really well with M2S, and they were great at the time, and we would have stayed for them, but for the fact that we started putting out quite a lot of stuff on Defected, and they wanted to start a DJ agency,
Hmm.
and they wanted to sort of do like a 360 deal where it was just like, we're putting out your records, we're managing your DJing, and it made sense.
Yeah, totally. Well, Graham from the Audio Horse passes through. He
Easy
says,
play.
"Big love, Gav. I'll check this out later." And he sends greetings. How are you, man?
When I was mentioning all those names, Audio Horse would definitely be another one I should mention in there.
Most definitely. Well, actually, I should really be talking to Graham at some point, because we did do, and you would have seen the conversations that I had, the Soulful House Mafia. I kind of merged that into these conversations that I have now, but definitely.
But there isn't something that Audio Horse is sort of coming back again, because Graham went on doing his own Malachi project.
Uh-huh.
Adam stopped doing music for a while.
Well, yeah, but they've just released a
Yeah,
whole heap of edits and reworkings
they've
and
come
re-released
back, haven't they?
big
Yeah.
on their Bandcamp, yeah. Chris Hunter's mentioning Dave Alcock, who says he's running his own agency and smashing it, to be fair. Shout out to Taz. Thank you for your comments on YouTube. Thank you for your gracious words. Saying he's enjoying the show.
Was that Dave from
Alcock from Milk and Two Sugars.
Milk? He's Sharon's brother.
Yeah.
Ah.
No,
No,
no.
because Sharon had a brother called Dave.
There is Dave Alcock. He
There's
also
another.
used to work side by side.
He might have just left when Dave had started. There might have been a bit of crossover.
Well, I was working there when Dave was working there, but he now manages Joey Negro. He manages Kerry. He manages Louis. Smashing it.
Dave gets a gig.
Don't get him a gig, because none of us will be able to afford him then. Okay, so let me just read these
I'm
comments.
super cheap these days.
Yeah.
Weddings and bar mitzvahs.
Sharon Alcabas was their surname. Dave Alcabas and Sharon Alcabas.
Yeah, I think I saw Sharon's now. We're digressing a bit, but he's managing like athletes and stuff like that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think he's got like an agency for like. I just sort of came across it by accident. Yeah. Anyway, but yeah, Milk and Two Sugars, then Defected, and we're sort of getting quite up to date now.
That's right. In the middle of all of that, one of the things I want to chuck in there, at some point in the early 2000s, when Timmy Vegas and I were working together at Soul Central, we came down and did a collaboration with you, with a singer called Johnny Fiore. Do you remember when we brought
Wonderful
Johnny
World.
down? Wonderful World. So we put that on my own label, Clean Cut Records, and then a little further down the line, I'm not sure if you and Timmy did a couple of things together, but I know you were maybe helping him engineer some of his tunes. But many people won't be familiar with the fact that you actually were the official engineer on the Strings of Life that got released and went into the pop charts, and you said that was one of your prouder moments, right? One of your most successful moments.
I mean, that was such an amazing record. I came to the studio, I just twiddled a few buttons and stuff, and the record was amazing. Very hard to take such a classic record as Strings of Life. I mean, it doesn't get much more classic house record than that, and make something out of it that's like fresh and so playable. I mean, you guys gave that record a whole lease of life, and all I did, just balance the levels and stuff. You guys take all the credit for that record.
Oh, well, it was still nice to have you part of the
it's very nice to have my name attached to it.
There you go.
And I didn't really do much engineering at that point for other people. It was more like, I think Simon signed the record to Defected, and Simon always, anything you bring to Simon, he's never going to say, yeah, that's perfect as it is. He always wants to just see if he can get an extra 10% better out of it, or cut it a little bit louder or something. That's why Simon's such a great A&R man.
I was going to say, that's why he's been so successful as well. And if he actually gets to see this, we wish him all the very best. Okay, so that gets us up to the changes. Copyright at some point, that, like with many things, the steam starts to run out of the project or the scene itself? There's a global crash and whatnot. What would you pinpoint? And in the midst of all this, a family starts a little bit later on. So tell us some of the major points from the mid to late 2000s.
We did a lot of DJing. I mean, we really smashed it. Like every weekend, we were at Heathrow or Gatwick Airport. Defected kept us really busy at that sort of time. There was a girl called Tess, Tess Kendall. Do you remember Tess?
Yeah.
She was like looking after our diary for us, and Tess was the most amazing manager ever. And we were playing everywhere, you know, like doing Australia tours and Japan. I remember my wife, and it was like our feet never touched the ground for a few years, which I'm sure a lot of, you know, there's a lot of DJs who are still like that now. And I just think back to those days and I was like, oh, it's a hard life. And then you sort of got to try and keep the studio stuff going at that same time. So, you know, every weekend we'd be sort of DJing somewhere, or sometimes off for a couple of weeks. Then we come back and we'd have a Monday off. And then Tuesdays it'd be like, right, in the studio, new copyright track, and working on the music. And I think that takes its toll after you do it for a number of years. And you said about having a family. And I think that was the point. You know, Sam had his first girl, Lola. And I just had a son, Ren, round about within a year of each other or something. And I think that just changed it all for us. We didn't want to be off every weekend, you know, just traveling all the time. You know, I wanted to be around at weekends with my kids, and same with Sam. And I think that we sort of amicably decided that, you know, copyright had sort of run its course at that point. So we
so try, if you can, put a timestamp on this. Yeah.
I suppose about 2013, 14, something like that.
Okay, so the beginning of the David Guetta period, really.
Yeah, maybe that killed it for us a bit as well.
I think that was the change of the landscape, right? More or less.
Yeah, I think so. And I got to the point where it's like, I'm not enjoying this anymore. And also, I think my music had become a bit stale. I wasn't enjoying what I was making. And maybe I felt at that time I was just trying to make records to please Defected. And, you know, I think I'd always made records just for myself. And having to make a record for sort of like, for somebody else to say, yeah, that's good enough. That sort of killed it a little bit for me as well. And so they reached a point. Also, Sam wanted to move back to Manchester because his wife's from there, his family are from there, and we at this point, you know, we'd done the whole DJ thing. We'd made a lot of music we were really proud of. We'd released a great album, and we just thought this is a good time to just cut it off rather than just sort of like drive it into the ground. We're not enjoying it as much as we used to. Let's just cut off copyright, and maybe at some point we'll come back to it. But I was really into photography at that time and was already like doing a lot of photography sort of stuff.
Was it a difficult decision though? You know, sort of getting rid of that cash cow, so to speak?
It wasn't even the cash cow anymore. The gigs were around that David Guetta time. The gigs were starting to thin out. I mean, we had an amazing time with Tess at Defected. Then we had another manager, and then our DJ manager just sort of kept changing like every year. So whoever came to take over the DJ arm of Defected, it just never really sort of settled into like a proper management again. And it's like, yeah, the gigs.
So by the time you made that decision, it wasn't that you were turning your back on a lot of money. It's just that there wasn't a lot of money there, so it made it easier.
There was some gigs were still really good. You know, a good gig was a good gig, and if it was like a Defected party at Ministry or something, it'd be really good. But we were doing a lot of crap stuff where it's like, I'm not going to say where because I don't want people listening there.
I don't. Without you being specific, it is. Everyone thinks that every gig is incredible, right? But it's not. Let's focus without being specific. Focus on some of those bad gigs. Some people might find it hard to believe that copyright are getting booked to go to a gig, and it's empty because was it because you were getting booked for the wrong gigs and the crowd weren't really correct?
They just wanted just to play like maybe like really commercial music or stuff. You know, I remember going to, all right, I'm going to name somewhere, Brazil, and it was like a really big party and stuff. But all they wanted to hear was like Black Eyed Peas and stuff like that, you know, like, and David Guetta mix of Black Eyed Peas. The other DJs would play that probably about 10 times during the night. And it wasn't really the music that we wanted to play. And, you know, we were just being sent to these places to play, and we couldn't really play what we wanted to play. You know, we had to play like either more commercial or it'd be crap, you know, so.
And then you'd come away feeling empty and like you were a fraud.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
I relate. I completely relate because this is your story, not mine. But you know, skip forward a couple of years, and that was exactly where I was at. The bigger the gig, the more money you get. The shitter the crowds. You know, I was getting booked to play. I was getting booked to play places. They were using Strings of Life as the advert for the club night, but they didn't have a clue where I was playing. They didn't like my music. I'm there going to try and do what I want to do, and it was just like falling. And there was a point where you could get away with it. We were having this conversation on a
play like
coffee
maybe
morning. I did.
two or three
You
tracks
could,
that you're
you could get
into.
so far, and then you think, okay, I'm going to try and give them what I think they want. But then it did get to a point that it was just like nothing I do is going to work here. So, and I'm assuming that's the
Yeah,
same for you.
I'd end up playing like two or three tracks that I sort of really like and I was digging, and then right, I'm gonna have to throw something commercial in because we're starting to look a bit bored now. And then there was we'd call them the pointy gigs. So Sam would always say like, "Oh, it's going to be a bit of a pointy gig." So it didn't really matter what you played as long as you sort of like stood there like a muppet doing that all the time.
I relate. I relate. Shout out to Rude Boy Rupert.
And
How are you,
so,
brother?
yeah,
Talking of
easy
pointy
rude
gigs.
boy.
Yes, my man.
Big love, Rupert.
Congratulations.
Big love, Rupert.
Congratulations on the new release, my man. Congratulations. Big up Chili
Making
Funk.
some really amazing music. Somewhere in that timeline, there was a great track I made with Rupert called Rupert can tell us what it's called. Just Rupert.
A DJ thing.
It's a DJ thing with a whisper sample on it.
Great.
And
Lot of love for Mr. Osmond.
so yeah, I was talking about
So talking about the photography.
no, I was talking about the pointy gigs.
Okay. Yes.
Doing the pointy gigs, and like you say, you feel like a phony and a fake, and it's like nowadays, if I go back to DJing again, I don't really want to play main rooms. I'd rather play the side room or the little room and just play what music I want, because I think it's true that you play the main room and it's just like you just sort of got to prostitute yourself out there and just play the commercial stuff.
It's,
Probably not everybody that has to do
soul
it.
destroying to be able to do that.
I'd
Okay,
love to play that little room at Glitterbox. Hi, you know the funky room there, or it's the toilets.
I was going to say the toilet, isn't it?
The toilet, that room is amazing. It's my dream to play there.
Well, we'll skip forward a little bit and talk about Glitterbox, but let's talk about then how you started, how the photography came into the conversation, and that was the decision next.
Well, I've been in photography since probably in the early 2000s. I bought a camera, and it was to just like when we were DJing. This was the time the internet sort of like first started up, and people getting websites. And I bought a camera just so we could take pictures to sort of post some stuff up on our website. So we had some, and my pictures were pretty crap back then, but I really loved it. And wherever I travelled, I take a few pictures of the gig, and then after the gig, maybe we had a flight at 11 o'clock in the morning. So 5, 6 in the morning, I'd be walking around empty streets of Morocco, taking pictures, or wherever I was in the world. It might be Hong Kong or wherever. And then I'd say, oh, well, I'm going over to there to DJ, and maybe I'll stay an extra day or two just to do photography. So I was getting really hard into like street photography. And I sort of like invested in a really nice camera. And at some point along the way, I'd be taking my camera to gigs, and Simon was always really supportive of my photography, done more,
Hmm.
and he always used to ask me to send him pictures after the gig because he said, "Oh, you really like my pictures and stuff," and sometimes they were better than the photographer who was hired to do the gig. And then he was the first person that said to me, "Gav, could you do my press shots for me?" And I was like, "Yeah, of course, of course." So we went down the South Bank and did a few shots, and I think that was a bit of a turning point for me. It's like, oh, I can earn money from doing photography. I never really thought of that. And this was about the time of copyright sort of starting to go a little bit like this. So, or I was losing interest in making the copyright music. So it's like, why don't I just do photography and do sort of focus a little bit on music photography rather than I've been doing street photography for years, up until then. And I'm going to start doing more press shots for people and take my camera to gigs. And that was it. And yeah, and I didn't earn so much money doing the photography as I was doing the DJing, but I was really happy doing something creative
Hmm.
that wasn't being sort of like vetoed by anybody else. It was like,
And you still get that satisfaction of the of, as you say, being creative and being able to look back, the same as when you mix down a tune and you go, yeah, I've done that. There's
oh
that
yeah,
sense of achievement.
maybe even more with the photography. I don't know why, but I
I
mean,
totally, I
I'm a
totally, totally relate because
Andy,
I went the same path.
I'm obsessed by photography. Really, I
Hmm.
really love it. And Paul Farris, who was listening earlier, I don't know if he's still there. He'll know exactly what I'm saying. He's the photo genius Brisbane. If you want to go on YouTube and check him out, he really knows. I mean, he was into photography years before I was, and yeah, I sort of got the photography bug, and it's never left.
Hmm.
And yeah, I still get a massive kick out of like when someone puts a nice comment on one of my photos or something.
Brilliant. And so you say you were doing that, and then that'll take us. I mean, I don't want to rush too far forward, but it will bring us up to the pandemic where you couldn't get out more, and you said that you were, you had to stop and reevaluate. So, was there any major points before then? Am I skipping too far forward? Paul is still here, by the way. He said thanks for the props, and Jeremy Braithwaite's back. He's just put the kids to bed. So
Yeah,
all the crew's here, all
it's
sat
nice,
down.
nice to have friends in the house.
Indeed, indeed.
So yeah, I mean, it was a transition because I remember Sam had gone back to Manchester. He was managing Sam Devine at the time. Now Sam is managing Honey Dijon,
Hmm.
doing an amazing job there with Honey. And actually, Sam's just sidetracking. Sam's really getting into photography now. He's
Oh,
kind of cool.
really?
He keeps on sending me pictures every day. He's like, "What do you think of this?" So yeah,
Yeah.
Sam sort of caught the bug off me. But
So Sam Holt
Sam Holt,
initially started off
not Sam
managing
Divine.
Sam
Sam Holt.
Divine, and now he's managing Honey Dijon, and obviously who's next level now.
Oh yeah, totally.
So shouts out to Sam if you get to check this out, brother.
No, I mean
Great,
Sam.
great, great memories.
I mean Sam was really copyright's manager as well as being part of copyright and making the music and sort of being half the DJing and stuff. Sam was the management, and he's always
Well,
been brilliant at that side of things.
I met Sam just as I began working on the rate on Choice FM in Birmingham. Actually, he had come down to Birmingham with his friend Dave, if I remember correctly, from Manchester,
Yeah,
and we were doing a party at
Dave
Bonds
Colours or something.
Dave Colours. It was the
Yeah.
party was called Colours.
Yes. Yeah.
So Sam and I were residents at Colours, so that was how I got to meet Sam.
Ah,
And
that's
and then
before I'd
obviously
even met Sam.
there you go, you see. So that was my connection with Sam. So, we go way back. So anyway, let's get back to your
I was
story.
like, my connection to Sam was Matt Jam Lamont.
Well, I didn't want to stop the conversation because we'd already got into it. I wanted to ask where you actually
We
did
were at
meet.
photography and Honey. We'll come back to there. But just
Uh-huh.
Matt Jam Lamont. Sam came down to London to live in London and said, a studio. And Matt's obviously said, "Oh, Gav." Sam came into my studio to rent it out for the day with Scotty.
Okay.
And at the end of the first day we worked together, I said, that's so much fun, and I really love the vibe you're on. Why don't you just don't pay me for the studio time, and I'm just going to become part of copyright? And that's how copyright started. So it was just a studio session where he hired the studio, and I said, I just want to be part of your thing, and I really love the vibe you guys are on.
Oh, nice. Well, I'm glad we got that into the conversation.
Yeah, no, I think that'd be nice. So we were at Photography Honey Dijon and
lockdown.
So yeah, but after I was all going to the photography thing, I still had my studio and I was still messing around doing a bit of music, and just decided, right, I'm just going to hang my headphones up for a while because I'd be fiddling around in the studio and just not really having any vibe. Maybe it's because I was looking for the next Sam to work with, or Nathan, or somebody, there where there was a spark, and because I always like collaborating rather than being a solo producer. And yeah, when lockdown came around, I was sort of like been doing a lot of club photography up to that point, and I was earning a living. I was doing all right. I wasn't earning what I was earning like from the good days of DJing. I was earning more than I was in the bad days of DJing. and just really enjoying it, because I'd been in the clubs and I was doing every defected party. I was a resident photographer at Ministry of Sound. I did a lot at E1, and then through Glitterbox, I met all the Sync the Pink guys, and there was a club called Savage, which was very, very, very gay. And everyone used to dress up in mad costumes, and that was just like the dream job for me, going and taking photos of all these people who really loved having their photo taken and were just visually amazing. So I mean, I've talked about this a couple of times before. Is like I should do a book at some point, because I've got so many good photos of around that time of the Glitterbox, and I still do their photos, but that was going on. Then lockdown came and it all stopped. So luckily, being self-employed, I could get some money from the government and stuff that sort of saw me through. But I started doing. My wife said to me when I was doing the club photography, sometimes it'd be a bit quiet. There'd be a month where I didn't have so many gigs, or it can be very up and down. So I started doing property photography and taking pictures for estate agents and doing houses and stuff, which is also quite fun. I enjoy it. And so I was working with an agency sort of doing that just when I felt like it. If they'd send through jobs. If I wasn't busy, I'd just take a few jobs. And then COVID happened, and that was like, oh, brilliant, I can just take more of the house stuff. And house stuff, that's quite good, that. So from house music to house photography. In fact, my property photography is actually called House Visions.
Okay.
So during lockdown, I started up this company, not working with the agency, and then, building my own property photography company, which keeps me really busy now. And so that saw me through lockdown and stopped me going crazy, I think, because there was, there was no work for anybody. Nobody needed a new press shop to go and sit in the yard.
Just before it must have been just before lockdown, or maybe at the very beginning of coming out of lockdown, there were not rumours, there was talk of you and Sam coming back together and playing in Croatia. Did that happen, or?
Yeah. Because Sam was out there with Honey, and I was out there doing photography. So someone had defected, thought, oh, Gavin and Sam are there. Let's get them on. And we did the first time we played together. It was actually the first time in about 5 or 6 years that I touched a pair of CDJs.
Okay.
I mean, I really broke away from music totally. Maybe for a year or two, I didn't want to listen to any, apart from when I'm out in the clubs. I'd be enjoying the music there, but I didn't want to create anything. I didn't want to DJ. I didn't want to try and make music, because I've been through that period of like trying to sit in the studio and come up with music and just not enjoying it. And anybody who's creative and has come up against that, sort of like you're not feeling the creativity. It's not a nice place.
Yeah.
So I'd really sort of moved far away from that. I didn't want to touch any music because it it was quite upsetting that I couldn't really find a vibe and didn't want to make any music anymore. So I just thought better just not to even touch it. And at home, I was listening Chet Baker, Miles Davis, and do you know what I mean? It was just like I didn't even want to listen to dance music at home.
Still smoking?
No. I stopped smoking. I don't know, when my kids were born. That's when I stopped.
Okay. Because
Yeah.
that would be great music to listen to while smoking.
I mean, if I feel if I'm in the right place at the right time and someone passes me a joint, it'll be like, yeah, I'll have a smoke. But apart from that, I never have any on me or never buy any, and that stopped when my kids were born.
Good. Okay, so the House Visions, the company doing well. Chris Hunter mentioned about the 360 drone shots. Obviously, people
Yeah, I saw Chris left a comment on there. I've only just discovered that my drone can do that. In fact, I only bought a drone just before this year. Oh, I was going to say something about Croatia because I'm coming back to Croatia again now. But yeah, when Defected got us in Croatia and Sam and I DJed, and I said that I hadn't touched a CDJ for 6 years.
That was it. Yeah.
And on one day we did a boat party for Sam Devine, and then the night time we did the beach stage, and it went off on the boat with Sam, and that was great because it was all our mates around us and Sam and all those guys. But the one that really I fell in love with DJing again was the playing on the beach stage. And so Sam and I, we were booked to play like 2 hours or something. And when we got to the end of our set, it was 2 a.m. or something. And Dunmore said, "This party's too good to stop. Just keep going." And then we carried on for like another 2 or 3 hours. Brian and John came back on, and I've forgotten his name because he's quite new, but he's another guy who's on in that camp. Yeah, his name's escaped me, but we stayed on till like 5 a.m, and I really fell in love with DJing again. And it was the first time I'd really touched the decks in 5 or 6 years. And I remember when I got on the decks for the first time that day on Sam's party, my hands were a bit shaking.
Really?
And I don't remember ever shaking at a gig. And maybe my first rave in 1989, I was a bit nervous, but it'd been that long. And the CDJs have sort of changed as well. So I was like, oh, how do I get to that menu and all that? I'd sort of like forgotten everything. But it was amazing, and just playing the music to an appreciative crowd. And I mean, we couldn't be playing to a better crowd because that Defected crowd is like a family, and they all knew who Copyright was, and so it was like we were playing to our home team, or the home team playing to their crowd, and that was amazing. And then
it's a proper it's a proper romantic return to the spotlight. Let me just say hi to Jenny. Thanks for your comments. Darren Giles passed through earlier. Big up, Darren. He says, two legends of the house scene. Nice to have your comment, my friend. Deli G has passed through. Deli would have been responsible for helping break a lot of your tunes back in the day. I'm sure you'll be the first to agree.
We used to go down to Bristol to go and be like guests on Deli's radio show, sort of like me and Brian back in the Catch Records days. So yeah, Deli, we'd send him everything. And then
he's definitely the man.
Yeah,
he's definitely the man. Colin is throwing up Essence of Life into the conversation.
Nice track. That's a record I'm proud of. I wouldn't say I'm really proud of every record I made, but that one, that's a special one, Colin. Thank you.
And there are calls here for Copyright to come and play at the Vocal Booth Weekender. Maybe we'll have I don't know who the promoter is. We'll have a word with him. Someone asked a question. Oh yeah, I doubt you're going to be able to answer this. Danny44, what has been your most ever memorable gig?
One of them is the one I just mentioned, that Croatia one, the return gig. And then another one was a biology on New Year's Eve, which was 1990, I think, or 1991. I can't remember. And it was one of those ones it was sort of towards the end of the rave days when the police, it was really up against the police and stuff, and like doing convoys to sort of like nobody knew where the venue was. and they found this venue in Slough. And when we arrived there, there was like the sound crew was. We arrived there at the same time as the convoys. The only way you could put a party on, everyone just arrived at the same time, and it was sort of like the police couldn't. There'd be like 10
There was
policemen,
nothing.
like
Yeah.
3,000 people, and yeah, they were still setting up. And I went on first. Uh, like as soon as they set up the sound, and they were still setting up the lights, and I was the first DJ on, and it was just like every track I played, it was like a football team had scored a goal, and everyone just went mad. And it was tracks like Quartz Meltdown and.
Well, Jeremy Braithwaite was there. He says 1990.
You,
I was
you
there.
were there at that party in Slough. Biology. Wally might have been there as well.
Fantastic. Ben Cornish
was there.
jumps in. Ben Cornish jumps in and says, "Face is flexing." Well, listen, we've been chatting for an hour and 45 minutes, and the questions are coming in. So I'm going to ask this one more question. I'm not going to put any more questions to you. What has been your most prized piece of kit over the years?
It's hard to put it to one. I mean, the MPC 60, because that was
It revolutionized the way you were working.
it was just like I was searching for that swing for years, and then when I got that machine, it was like that's where it comes from. It could have been an SP 1200, but the MPC 60 was the way I went. And but now actually, I've got the MPC 60 still over there, which I want somebody else to use it because I don't use it anymore. So I put a post like about a month ago, and a couple of people have shown some interest because I'd rather see it used than just sitting there. It's not good for the machine to just not be used. And then I bought one of these. It's a good advert for Akai now. I love this. Absolutely love this machine.
The live.
Yeah. You don't even. Where's the power? Yeah. So you don't even need to plug it in, and it's got its own speaker, and the speaker sounds amazing on there. And then things that would take me like half an hour cutting up a sample on the MPC 60 is like 10 seconds on this. You know, you see your sample, it's just like, yeah, cut there, cut there, cut there, cut there, cut there. This machine's dope. So I really love this at the moment. And what I was saying as well about keeping it simple, and like back in the early days when I used to make records and all I had was one sampler and a Casio keyboard. Now I don't come in the studio and play with anything. I sit on that machine. I go and sit on the sofa with a pair of headphones downstairs.
Headphones on. Yeah.
Yeah, a pair of headphones on. The kids might be watching TV, and I'm sitting there just like chopping up samples. I've got hundreds of ideas on that machine where it's just like I don't care about ever finishing anything. I just want to put down an idea and just enough like there's 8 bars that works. I'm not even going to arrange it or anything. It just works. It's an idea, and when I'm ready, I'll come back to it.
Which will never happen. Sofa Beats, Chris says.
Sofa Beats Volume 1. Sofa Surfing Volume 1.
Well, listen, I could quite easily sit here reminiscing with you all evening, but I think we've covered the crux of the. As I say, we've put some bones down to the story. I'm sure that there will be other occasions where we could flesh it out a lot more, because we have skipped through quite a hell of a lot in those.
Yeah, I'm sure there's loads of people I'm going to think, oh, I should have mentioned them. Like when you said Rude Boy came on, Rude Boy Rupert. And, you know, there's so many people that I've made records with over the year, and I'd love to sort of like mention everybody and all the people I've forgotten to mention. I love you all. And, you know, there's just too many to mention. And
I've got the "This Is Your Life" theme tune in my ears now.
in it,
I should come with the big book.
30 years of doing this shit, you know. So
it's been fantastic.
Covered a lot of ground in 2 hours.
Well, and there's still a lot more. What I'll do is I'll get you to come on, and we'll, because I've chatted to so many people down the years, and we'll have a panel. Maybe over Christmas we'll get 3 or 4 of you all on, have a little bit of a chinwag and
definitely. Yeah, I saw the one you did the other week, you know, and I didn't see all of it. I just sort of like came in for a little bit, but yeah,
Yeah, there's a fair few. So, but I just want to say thank you for giving me your time, man. It's been, you have, I know maybe you said to me, "Are you too kind with your words, Andy?" But I hold you in such high regard.
thank you, mate.
I
Thank you.
have so many fun memories of your music being part of my journey. I then have so many fun memories of getting to know you, on a personal level, working with you myself as well, and then watching your rise to success. So I want to say thank you so much for giving me your time today and respect
Thank
to
you.
everything. Yeah.
Thank you,
Uh,
100%.
I'm I'm going to say a few farewells to these people, and I will send you a link so you can see out everyone there. You'll see all the comments, and I will invite everyone that's watching the recording to leave
I
more.
saw
So
my mate Anna from France. She used to be a DJ called Sisters in Sound. I saw
okay,
she was on there. Just someone say hi, Anna.
hi
And
Anna.
if you say your goodbyes, I'll just see if there's anybody else I need to say goodbye to.
Okay, well, yeah, usually this I would change the screen, but I won't while he's reading that. Feel free to interrupt if you need to. So, yeah, inspire and be inspired. Next week on the show, I'll tell you what that's going to be after I say goodbye to Gavin. If you wouldn't mind, head on over to my YouTube channel and you can subscribe to me there because I'm ever so close to getting to 1,000 subscribers. It's just a little challenge I've set myself. I'm about 35, more like 40 people away from hitting that 1,000 subscribers. So if you could do that, it's free and it'll mean a lot to me. Right, I need to change my screen, Gav, so I'm going to say goodbye, right?
Yeah, no, just bye, everybody. Thank you for listening. It's been great, Andy. Thank you for having me on.
Wicked, brother. Respect, man. Respect. I'm glad. I
You got
say it a
that.
lot. I was glad that we were able to give you your flowers now while you're here to accept them.
Love you, man.
See you later, man. One love. Love you too. Okay, so as I bid farewell to Gavin, he has gone. I love that. Love that. I love all of these conversations, and it means a lot having you guys with me as well. I've got a new screen here that's changed, as you can see. It shows I'm actually at 958 subscribers. If you subscribe now, that will actually go live. That will actually go up in real time. On the screen here in the bottom right hand corner, we have my access members. Those are people who have enabled me to get this brand new camera. I got a new screen in the studio. I am going to be gifting somebody some money at the weekend. If you're interested at all about that, you can find the information at the end of the stream. I'll draw your attention to a conversation I'm having next Wednesday. We're going to be talking about multi-level marketing. Louise Barnacle is a young lady I've met out on the clubbing circuit. So many of you will know her, and she's going to be talking about the misconceptions of multi-level marketing. Let me just have a quick scroll through some of these names. Let me see if I haven't said hello to anybody. On the top left hand corner, you can see all the follows and the likes as well of the official page. I know there's been a hell of a lot more likes and shares than you can see there, but unless you are on the official page, then it doesn't actually show up. I've scrolled all the way to the top. Let me see if there's anybody that I missed that I didn't say hello to. Everyone is saying thank you. Schoolie. Thank you for staying till the end, my brother. I learnt everything from you. Paul Woodman, I'm sorry if I didn't say hello to you earlier. I think I may have done. My mind is a blank scrolling through. Everyone is saying thank you. Yes, the camera is a new Sony cam. ZX1 mirrorless camera. It's really good. If you come up to it, it focuses really well. If I'm gonna blah blah blah, it's something that I always wanted for a long time. I've been able to do it thanks to your help, Chris, as being part of Access. So I am going to bid you farewell. I've taken up way too much of your time. My chips are out there waiting for me. I don't eat chips a lot, but I've got chips tonight. Thank you, everyone. I've loved that. Respect to Gavin. Please, if you're watching the recording, do leave a comment. Let Gavin know how much you enjoyed that. And I'll catch you around. Take care.